If there is two manga and or anime that Tower of God is compared to very often, I would argue it's One Piece and Hunter x Hunter. But I have often heard this line: Tower of God is the One Piece of Webtoons. And I think that's a extreme oversimplification of Tower of God. And I honestly would argue that while I understand why people say this, it's actually not that crazy. I understand why people say it. Especially when you think about the ever expansive cast, the world building, and the lore of both series. So I somewhat get it. However, I think it's misguided. I think it's wrong. And I think that people go to Tower of God and One Piece for very different reasons. And the literal tone and ambience of both stories are different and kind of framed differently. So, kind of want to do a little contrast and comparison of the two series, speaking about where they're similar, where they're different, where there's a little bit of overlap and things of that nature. So, like the video, subscribe, hit the bell down so the Ghost of 13-month series doesn't get you. Without further ado, let's hop right in.
A little something like Eenie, meanie, right from the beginning. Smoke a little pack, but the pack never timid. Church, but I'm seeing it. Curse when I'm winning. She need a new back. When it's back, I'ma bend it. Slap up some guinea, pass me the henny. Watch a nigga black slipper yak, I'ma quit it. Swerve in the Benzie, perfume is Fendi. Bobbin' move fast, real fast like I'm Ricky. Just 'cause I'm pretty, came from the dirt. Shoving up a nigga can't handle the work. Ooh, y'all, swing with it first. Young white girl like a rambo.
Tower of God and One Piece are two series that kind of pride themselves on the lore and world building. And I do think that they both do these things at a very high level. Not perfect. Nothing is perfect in this world. Everything has flaws, but to a very high level and degree. One thing about world building that is important to me personally speaking is that I need it to, and lore, I need it to actually interact with the characters in real time. What do I mean by that? I'm gonna take Toriko for an example. And when you go to the gourmet world, not the human world, the gourmet world, and there was things like meteor rain. This is a really strange phenomenon that's unique to the Toriko world, but we're seeing the characters in real time have to interact with that kind of thing. Now let's go to One Piece. Think about how crazy the Grand Line is, the New World, in terms of random whirlpools, the ever-changing weather, lightning, rain, and all kinds of incredible, crazy things. The entire one island is fire and ice. We see these characters have to overcome these obstacles, and like without Nami, these guys would probably sail into the calm belt and get eaten by sea king. So you see how like the world is alive and actually interacting with our characters in real time. That's very significant to me. The same way with Tower of God and Ryuka's floor 43 to actually have weird Shinsu rules because he killed the administrator there. Like, do you see how like these kids? So like for me, a lot of people are like, "Oh, the world is so good," but I don't care if you speak about some primordial being who made this part of the forbidden forest where you lose your memories and no one goes there. That's just to me trying to make your world seem bigger than it is. But if the characters in present time don't deal with and interact with those things, I personally find it kind of pointless. That's just a personal thing. But I get it. One Piece, they go from island to island. They go from floor to floor. And the floors are vastly different. The same way you can go to like a prehistoric island and all of a sudden the next island you go to has like toys and stuff like that. Like the floors and islands that these characters visit are completely different. So I still even get it from that standpoint. We're like, this is why I'm highlighting some of the overlaps. Then they have the ever-expansive cast. With each floor, you meet different people. You might assimilate some of them into the crew. Some of them might be kind of honorary members of the main group that we're following. Bam's team, Straw Hats, whatever the case is. You got like Team Sweet and Sour, who is like a subset of that. They're all together in some way, shape, or form. But then you got the Straw Hat Grand Fleet and all the connections Luffy has made on various islands. Like, I get it. But I would argue that those things are not even that's not unique to One Piece. Like storytelling like that. It reminds me of a video that I saw recently. I watched it with my friend Simi. Oh, you guys know Simi. That's the guy. That's the Red Witch enthusiast. And we were watching a video where basically they were saying, did Ori and the not Blind Forest, Ori and the Will Wisp, did it copy Hollow Knight? And it's like a lot of the things in Hollow Knight that you might be attributing to what Ori and the Will Wisp are doing are things that have been in video games for eons, for years, for decades even. As a matter of fact, they're probably both drawing inspiration from Dark Souls more than anything else. So when people kind of, make One Piece the golden standard of like world building, ever expansive cast and lore, I have no problem with that because it's well deserved and it's very popular, but it's not like the end all be all. It's not the only thing. It's not the first series, whether it's manga, anime, video games, movies, television. It's not the first thing to do that. So I would just kind of pump the brakes in that aspect. But again, I get it. I just think it's a very lazy comparison. It kind of reminds me of like, I don't know if you guys know this, but I do not like blanket terms in general. And I kind of don't like when people pitch something and recommend it and they kind of use a very lazy comparison where it's like, oh, this is like Runaways meets Star Wars. And it's like, why don't you just tell me in detail? Have you guys ever watched any video game reviewer speak about like, let's say there's a new game, it's a very difficult platformer. And the IGN person will be like, this game is the Dark Souls of platformers. Now, you, if you're a gamer and you're into that, you know what they mean. They mean, this game is hard because we associate difficulty with Dark Souls. But what you fail to do is explain to me what makes this game specifically challenging. Which is why I don't like when people are kind of like, oh, it's like Tower God's like the One Piece with like, Webtoons. No. The level of the energy, the vibe, the ambience of Tower of God is honestly unlike anything that I've ever read. The mystery, the intrigue, it's somewhat an isekai story if you really want to kind of go there. We're following Bam through this mysterious tower where we're learning things with him because he is just as clueless as us, the reader. Is far different than Luffy's just kind of willful ignorance, but we have so much information in One Piece that Luffy's not privy to that we know. Dramatic irony, obviously, but we learn things through the lens and eyes of other characters. More so when it comes to Tower of God, we only really learn with Bam as he grows. Bam and Luffy themselves, are they similar? They have some overlaps, but I would argue that they're handled much differently, and they are extremely different. I think they're both good-natured kids with like a big heart that want to do stuff and have their own goals and whatnot. They have selfish tendencies, but they will always fight for their friends and whatnot. But Luffy is like an ape. Luffy is rambunctious. Luffy is a hyperactive knucklehead. Luffy is running everywhere, screaming at the top of his lungs, and not understanding things. And he's kind of like openly stupid. He's not naive, but like you just like. Oh, I'm Soke King. Oh, that's not Usopp. That's like he's like that wouldn't work on someone like Bam, right? So you have to also understand how the main characters are handled, how their stories are told. You could start to argue now that Luffy is kind of falling into some fate stuff, but Bam has always from the get-go basically been like a child of destiny, where it's like his coming to the tower, his ascension in the tower, and there's things in the tower that are kind of almost there for him, like Enryu Storm related to Arlene, X, Y, and Z. I don't want to go into all full detail. You all read the story, you all know, right? So there's no need to go in full detail. My point is just that it almost seems like this is kind of fated. It's Bam's destiny to do this, to face jihad and blah, blah, blah. Where Luffy's just like, I want to be Pirate King. Let's get it and go. Now I understand there's a lot of stuff there that's almost pushing Luffy to be a bit more of a child of destiny. I'm not denying that, but that came later, more so than it was there initially. The ever expansive cast is something that probably comes to my mind, where it's like these are two authors, two writers that consistently have the cast growing, expanding as we explore more of the world, more of the tower, more of the islands, more of the floors, right? Where the cast is just growing, whether the people that we are traveling with or whether it's just like characters on the side somewhere else, or just for that specific island, just for that specific floor. And yeah, that's an overlap, but I still think that it's handled completely different. I would argue that it's a lot more disconnected in Tower of God, where I would argue that One Piece has a better interconnectivity of all things, where it's like Luffy does something cool in Alabasta, his bounty goes up. Somebody on a previous island that met him is privy of this information. Like, it always feels cohesive and together. Where I'd argue in Tower of God a lot of the times, it baffles me that someone can see a wreck and not know who a wreck is. Is this not, based off recognition, power, and influence? he's not influential. So it's like, you know, people will see Luffy and be able to be like, oh, that's Straw Hat Luffy, his epithet. I could even if I haven't seen him, based on the fact that he has the straw hat on, boom. So even some of the way that information percolates and trickles down in the One Piece and the Tower God universe is different. So even if there's an overlap in terms of they both do this thing, I would say that the way they both do this thing, like handling the cast, not the same. Or at the very least, as a reader, as a person who's experiencing these stories, you don't feel the same when you kind of introduced to a One Piece character, maybe the same way you're introduced to an epic character in like Tower of God. It doesn't even feel the same from like an intuitive standpoint, if you get what I'm saying. I hope that made sense. If not, I'll try to if not, just let me know. I'll elaborate in the comments. I probably can type this a lot better than I can say it, because I am going off the dome. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to speak of specifically when it comes to these two series and why I think a lot of people compare them. Hunter x Hunter is another one, I guess, compared to this series a lot. I would argue mostly because of Ran being similar to Killua and maybe a little bit design and obviously electric abilities and lightning abilities. And also because in Tower of God, they do a lot of tests and games, whereas in Hunter x Hunter at one point when they were getting their, Hunter's exam, they participated in a lot of testing games as well. So that's another comparison that's out there. But again, vastly different stories. Though I would argue the overall ambience of Hunter x Hunter and Tower of God are a lot more similar than One Piece. One Piece, I don't know if people have noticed this with One Piece. One Piece is honestly a pretty dark story, all things considered. But because of the way it is illustrated and told, and because the characters are so over the top, zany, and wacky, it actually acts a bit as a veil to kind of hide the fact that there are these themes of racism and discrimination, philosophy, adhering to various types of justice, some very extreme types of justice that are a little going a little too far and stuff like that. These backstories are incredibly sad. I think the flashback game in One Piece is far leagues ahead than how it's handled in Tower of God, backstories and flashbacks in general. But I don't think there's very many series that I think do flashbacks as well as One Piece, personally speaking. I mean, no, I'm gonna say that, but like not to their level. Like One Piece has a very good timing, I would say, with its flashbacks, where I think that a lot of authors use flashbacks to fill in a gap of time when it's kind of convenient so they can explain something. So anyways, I don't want to ramble on too long. Ultimately, I kind of get it. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I get why people say it, but I don't agree with it overall. Are there similarities to Tower of God in One Piece? Sure. Just like there's probably similarities with Tower of God and JoJo or something. Like, you can always make a connection somewhere. But I disagree with the idea that that the Tower of God is the One Piece of Webtoons. Tower of God is the first Tower of God, and there is nothing like it. And One Piece is just One Piece, and there's nothing really like it. That's my 2 cents. You guys tell me what you think in the comment section below. Do you think that Tower of God is the One Piece of Webtoons? Do you at least think it makes sense? Have you even heard that? Is that something you never heard before? I admit this is something that I heard a lot more back in the day. It's not something I've heard recently too often. I still see it here and there when I see someone recommending it on Twitter or something, but it's not as frequent. So yeah, like, subscribe, hit the bell dance. The Ghost of 13 Months series does not get you. Stay awesome. Keep reading One Piece, keep reading Tower of God, because them shit's gas, boy. I'm back for a quick second just to quickly just say that Oda and SIU's approach and writing styles are also just vastly different, just completely different. Oda off-screens a lot of stuff. I think some of the way that the power systems are handled are different too. Like, they're just not the same, man. Just not the same. I don't want to go back into it too much, but yeah. All right, you guys be good. You guys be easy.